Opening, the sound before the sight. Before the first shadow crawls across the screen, before a single word is spoken, there is sound. Not music, at least not in the comforting sense, but a low, almost imperceptible vibration, like the world itself is holding its breath. A faint wind moans through a hollow space. Somewhere, something creaks, slow and deliberate, as if testing the silence. This is the opening language of dread. It tells us, without explanation, that safety has already been abandoned. In dark fantasy, sound does not decorate the story. It hunts it. A sparse soundscape is never empty. Silence, when sculpted with intention, becomes a pressure chamber. The absence of melody sharpens the listener's awareness, forcing the mind to scan for threats. A single distant echo can suggest a vast unseen space, while a muffled heartbeat can collapse the world inward, trapping us inside a character's fear. From the very first seconds, sound establishes the rules: you are not in control here. This is the echo of dread, the deliberate use of sound as a narrative weapon. The unseen blade, why sound cuts deeper than sight. Vision is honest in its dishonesty. We know images can be manipulated, staged, framed. We brace ourselves for what we see. Sound, however, slips past our defenses. It enters without permission, vibrating bones, triggering memories, awakening instincts older than language. Long before humans learned to paint stories on cave walls, they learned to fear the snap of a branch in the dark. Dark fantasy exploits this ancient wiring. Where light reveals and explains, sound implies and threatens. A shadow might be dismissed as a trick of the eye, a whisper heard behind you demands belief. Sound operates in the margins. It suggests presence without proof. A footstep heard but never shown creates a predator that cannot be measured. The mind fills the gap with something far worse than any designer could render. This is why dread lingers after the credits roll. Images fade. Sounds echo. Silence is a living entity. In most genres, silence is a pause. In dark fantasy, silence is a character. Consider the moment when all ambient noise drops away. No wind. No insects. No distant hum of life. Just a vacuum. The audience leans forward, breath shallow, because silence of that kind feels wrong. Nature, we know instinctively, does not go quiet unless something is hunting. This engineered silence creates anticipation so sharp it becomes painful. The viewer waits for the sound that will break it, dreading it and craving it at the same time. When the sound finally arrives, a sudden clang, a whispered name, a scream torn short, it lands with amplified force. Silence does not calm us. It prepares the blade. The language of low frequencies. Dark fantasy sound designers often speak in a language the conscious mind barely understands: sub-bass rumbles, infrasonic tones, vibrations felt more than heard. These sounds mimic natural warning signals, earthquakes, storms, the growl of massive animals. Low frequencies bypass rational thought. They create unease without explanation. The viewer may not even notice the sound, yet their chest tightens, their pulse quickens. Something is wrong, the body insists, even if the eyes see nothing. This is dread at its most insidious, fear without a face. Whispers, breaths, and the violation of space. Few sounds are as unsettling as a whisper. A whisper violates personal space. It implies proximity. Intimacy. A presence close enough to touch. In dark fantasy, whispers are rarely comforting. They curl around the ear, carrying half-formed words, distorted syllables, voices that do not quite belong to the living. Breath, too, becomes a weapon. Labored breathing in the darkness, a sudden exhale behind the protagonist, the sound of lungs struggling against unseen pressure, all of these remind us of our own fragile bodies. Breath is life. To hear it falter is to feel mortality tightening its grip. Distorted familiarity, twisting the known. One of the most effective sonic techniques in dark fantasy is the corruption of familiar sounds. A child's lullaby slowed and warped. Church bells ringing off key. A music box playing a melody just slightly wrong. These sounds unsettle because they betray trust. They take something associated with safety, faith, or innocence and rot it from within. The listener recognizes the sound but cannot reconcile its new form. The result is cognitive dissonance, a sense that the world itself has become unreliable. When the familiar turns hostile, nowhere feels safe. Echoes in endless spaces. Echo is the sound of absence. In dark fantasy, echo suggests vastness, cathedrals without gods, tunnels that never end, ruins swallowed by time. Each footstep returns delayed, distorted, as if the space is responding in its own voice. Echo implies isolation. It tells us the character is small, exposed, and alone. Worse, it suggests that something else might be listening. Every sound becomes a risk, every movement a broadcast. The echo does not answer. It waits. Rhythm of fear, timing and expectation. Dread is not constant. It pulses. Sound designers manipulate rhythm to control the audience's nervous system. Long stretches of minimal sound lull the viewer into a fragile calm, only to be shattered by sudden noise. Conversely, relentless droning can exhaust the senses, making even silence feel threatening. Timing is everything. A scare that arrives too soon is cheap. One that arrives too late allows tension to decay. Dark fantasy thrives in the unbearable middle, the moment where the audience knows something is coming but does not know when. Sound stretches that moment until it breaks. The monster you never hear. Sometimes, the most terrifying sound is the one that never arrives. An unseen creature that makes no noise defies expectation. We are trained to listen for danger. When danger is silent, paranoia blooms. Every harmless sound, a drip of water, or rustle of cloth, becomes suspect. In these moments, sound design forces the audience to become the monster's ears, straining to detect what cannot be detected. Fear turns inward. The imagination supplies the threat. Music is moral corruption. In dark fantasy, music rarely guides emotion gently. It corrupts it. Minor keys, unresolved chords, dissonant strings, all signal instability. Themes may begin beautifully, only to decay over time, mirroring a character's descent. Instruments may sound strained, out of tune, or processed until they barely resemble themselves. Music becomes a lie told sweetly. It invites, then betrays. Cultural memory and ancestral fear. Certain sounds carry cultural weight, funeral chants, ritual drums, sacred hymns. Dark fantasy often repurposes these, stripping them of context and placing them in profane settings. The result is ancestral unease. Even if the viewer cannot name why a sound feels wrong, history answers for them. The sound resonates with buried memory, with stories passed down through generations about spirits, curses, and forbidden places. Fear remembers what the mind forgets. The afterimage of sound. When the story ends, the screen goes dark. The last image fades. But the sound lingers. A final echo. A whisper cut short. A low hum that resolves into silence. Hours later, alone in the dark, the viewer remembers not what they saw, but what they heard. The creak of a door. The distant call of something unnamed. The oppressive quiet before the scream. This is the true power of sound as a narrative weapon. It does not end when the story ends. It follows. It haunts. It resurfaces in quiet rooms and sleepless nights. Conclusion: listening is an act of surrender. To experience dark fantasy fully is to surrender control of the ears. To listen without protection. Sound enters us, shapes us, unsettles us. It tells a story beneath the story, one written in vibration and absence rather than words. The echo of dread is not accidental. It is crafted with precision, restraint, and a deep understanding of human fear. It is the sound of footsteps behind you when no one is there. The silence that feels too heavy. The whisper that knows your name. And once you have truly listened, you will never hear silence the same way again.